What is going on, my people? I am so pumped up about today's goal setting session. Let me ask you guys, have you ever set goals only never to accomplish them? Maybe you've set goals and you've been like pushing so hard, but for some reason, you always convince yourself never to finish out strong. Well, if that's the case, you might even have like an all or nothing mentality that's like, well, if I don't do everything the way that it needs to be done, then I'm not going to be able to see success. Well, no matter what, I really want you to know that this workshop was created for you. So if you've set goals before, if you haven't hit them, if you haven't gotten close, if you convince yourself not to like really lean in the time that you need it the most, this workshop is going to be for you. And I want to tell you that it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your desire to achieve these goals. It doesn't even have anything to do with the fact of the way that your business looks, or the way that your career looks, or the way that your parenting skills right now look, or the way that any of that stuff. It has to do with the fact that you were just never taught how to set goals properly. Guys, this is exactly where I was. I was literally struggling with this for a long time, trying to hit my goals, and I didn't realize that it just was the facts that I wasn't setting them right. Once I got connected to my mentor, and I really learned and understood these philosophies, it totally changed the game for me. And I want to share with you guys today, really the blueprint that I share, not only inside of my programs, but what I use every single year when I set goals for myself. Let me tell you, the first year that I did this, I 5X'd my business and spent 4 times as many, or went on 4 times as many vacations with my family and felt more connected to them than ever before. Because what we're going to talk about in the beginning here is like when you can find a spot that's between where your values are, where your mission is, what you actually want, right? Not what everybody else says they want or comparing yourself to anybody else. But when you can find the synergy of all those things, you really do become unstoppable, which is what I did and talked about last weekend, which I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But I really want you guys to get into the frame of mind of setting powerful freaking goals, all right? Because that is what we are here to do. Now, I want to welcome you here to Modern Leadership, everybody who's here, who's live, as well as people who are, what's up, Kurt? What's up, Elizabeth? As well as people who are watching the replay. I appreciate you guys so freaking much. It means the world to me to have you here, but also it proves that you are hungry for growth. You're hungry to see things in a different perspective. And that's what we do here at Modern Leadership. I teach people how to see things differently, because when you start seeing the world differently, the world will start seeing you differently too. And this looks like you elevating your influence, you elevating your impact, not only with your career, not only in your business, but also at home, and really elevating your influence with yourself. And we do that in a way that doesn't prevent you from like really taking care of yourself, right? I don't want anybody to experience burnout or overwhelm or all that other nonsense. I'm gonna be doing a video about that next week. But really, it's about the power of having it all and not necessarily going down the road of you having to be that person who does it all and experiencing burnout and, you know, putting your family on the back burner. It has to do with not being willing to sacrifice. All right. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about like where the synergy is between all those. Now here on the channel, we release videos on Mondays and Thursdays, short, quick tip videos based off of modern leadership strategies that are actually working now. And then Saturdays, we have longer workshops like this one here today. Now I'm going to take you through a session that I would typically take somebody through who joins one of my paid programs. Now, if you're in the Ideal Leader Blueprint, which is getting a revamp for 2023, I'll let everybody know when that's gonna happen, and I'll talk to you about that. I take people through the structure because they don't even realize how important it is how you set goals. Most people either just set goals based off of what they think they want, and then they try and like force it and push and try and just spend more time and energy and effort there. And they realize that there's other ways to succeed. There's other ways to get there faster, but they were just so much in the grind. They were so much in the just do. They didn't actually take a second to go, okay, let me think about this in a way that actually is the mixture of what I actually value and the goals that I truly want. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So who am I? My name is Mark Hildebrand. I'm the founder of Modern Leadership. And I'm also a best-selling author, a police sergeant from LAPD until February 2nd next year, which is when I'm going to retire. I'm an online speaker, teacher, trainer, motivator, co-creator of the Push Coach Certification School, a whole bunch of other things that I totally sucked at, being a parent, being a spouse, and I had to grow through, all right? And one of those things that I did is setting goals in every single one of these areas and not setting them individually, which is what most people do, setting them as a totality, because when I can set them together and I can marry those two things up, that's where you can have the best of all those worlds. And that's what we're going to do today. But I want to start off, and my mentor Josh always loves to start off like this, and I do too, because I want to let you know like why goal setting is so hard, all right? Why goal setting and why achieving those goals are actually so hard, all right? A couple things, all right? Number one is, have you guys ever like started to head towards your goal, and then you had that shiny object syndrome? Where you're like, well, I could do this, I could do that, but this new thing just came out, this new platform came out, this new way of doing things. And before you know it, you actually don't give that thing long enough to actually be able to succeed, right? You're just constantly changing things up over and over and over again. That is one of the main contributors to why goals are so hard. Another reason is because we look at what other people are achieving. We look at other people who have businesses and things that we think we want, but in reality, if we were to actually sit down and slow down and go, do I really want that? Do I really want to have 50 calls every single week with one-on-one people? Do I really want to have that big of a team? Do I really want to have all of the things that come with that? And what we don't realize is that deep down inside here, we actually don't want that. And if we don't want that deep down in here, it doesn't matter what we think, like in the forefront of our mind, we're not going to be willing to put in the energy and the effort to actually go and get it. This is really like what we like to call self-sabotage. It's really this thing in here that it will actually prevent you from showing up. Now, next week on the 31st, I'm actually going to be putting together an entire presentation about how to prevent self-sabotage. I'm going to bring my beautiful wife, Teresa, who's on with us right here, to really help not only how I show this to leaders, but she shows it to mompreneurs, and really marrying up that synergy with one another to be able to like get you to stop self-sabotaging. But before we even get there, we need to find out what we really want, and we need to find out what we really value and find the mixture of those two. And then we can go to next week, which is getting out of our own way. All right. So definitely tune in for next Saturday for that. All right. Now, I want to get started by diving a little bit deep into this idea of core values. All right. This idea of core values. Now, when I say core values, let me tell you, like before I had heard how to do core values, right? Which is what I'm going to teach you in the beginning of this stage. I really didn't spend any time on it because I thought it was kind of dumb. I actually honestly thought it was stupid. Why would I want to do that? It doesn't even make any sense, right? It's like Simon Sinek says, like you got to start with why, right? And when you understand your core values, what is like near and dear to you, then you can find a way to get towards your goal, which is going to be the second half of this workshop, to actually go out and get after it and get it, right? But if we don't really think and slow down enough to think about what is near and dear to us, these are like the things that we don't even really think about, but like literally everything is flowing through it. When you get to the end of the day, there's days where you feel like, I rocked it today. I was on point. Do you know why? If you examine it, it's because you were living within your core values. There's like a set of values that is really near and dear to you, and that if you're flowing through those, you feel amazing. You feel on point. Like Josh says, your fire goes on your eyeballs. You're like, I'm living on purpose right now. One of those for me is impact. It's the reason why I'm doing this, guys, because when I realize the impact that me setting these goals for myself, but also be sharing with you what that can do for your life, and maybe people that you coach, maybe people that you lead, maybe the people in your career, maybe those little people that you have that are going to be opening presents tomorrow. Like when I think about that, it fires me up because that is one of my core values is impact. Impact is so important and critical to me. So you know what? When I don't feel like waking up and getting after it, which believe it or not, right before this, I really didn't feel like getting after it, going through some issues and stuff at my house right now. But when I think about the impact that I get to make with this, it fires me up and gets me back into the game. It gets me back to, no, people need me now more than ever. And really revisiting that to remind myself that I have to flow through my core values to get to my goals is critically important. Guys, if I told you that you can have massive success in your business or your career, but that you'd have to do it at the cost of your family, what would you say? Would you be all in? Like maybe if you heard a motivational speech for a little bit, maybe you would, but I promise you when you get into the grind and your family starts saying, I don't even know who you are anymore. And like they say, you come home with a pocket full of money to a home full of strangers, you're not going to be actually going out there and getting after it. I promise you, if your brain is telling you, like, no, this is not in congruence with our values, you're not going to be able to go out there and get after it as much as you want to. You're not going to be able to go out and hit those goals. That's why it's so critical that we do this before we set goals. So many people get into goal setting and they're like, okay, let's think about what you really want. And they forget that there's this part that's deep down inside of us. It's called our belief system. It's called our core values. It's called what's going on in here. And when it's running in the background, if you're trying to force it to do something that it doesn't want to do to be able to achieve a goal, you won't be able to last that long. You can't outdo and outsmart like your unconscious mind when it comes to this. You've got to figure out what is near and dear to me, what do I value, and how do I run my actual goals through those set of values, because the marriage of both of those makes you truly unstoppable. All right. So this is what we're going to do. All right. We're going to talk about our leadership core values. You're on a leadership channel here. I love to think about core values in terms of leadership, because here's the thing. When you think about the impact that you're making, when you think about like even your personal health, when you think about like maybe you have a business you want to grow, maybe you have a position that you want to get in your career, when you have like an impact goal that you want to make out in the world, it's not just about you, even though it starts within you. But being a leader, that means that everything that you do is a role model for everybody else around you. And for me, that flows through my impact. Remember? For me, my goal is impact. That means not just impact for you guys. That means impact for my wife. That means impact for my kids. That means impact for the people at work who see me doing this stuff. That means impact for people on social media, impact for people who are on YouTube. I want to make an impact. And I do that for multiple different areas. And if you can't kind of like hear like when we talk about core values, it will also help you to make sure that you're saying yes to the right things and no to the wrong things. If I was to say yes to things that weren't going to create impact for me, it would make me feel like, I would be kind of resentful. I would be upset. I would be frustrated, right? One of my second values, core values, is family. If I was saying yes to something that was just totally taking me out of my element with family, and it was like something that went in the exact opposite of that, and I was like, oh no, you got to hustle your face off. And then when your kids turn 18, then you get to spend time with them, right? If I heard that message, I would be like, no, I'm not giving that message. As a matter of fact, I don't condone that message because those are my values. Now, I want to say this, when it comes to your leadership values, these are the things that are like, these are the things that you have to put a stake in the ground, meaning nobody tells you what you value. I hope you didn't come here for me to tell you what to value. No, you're a leader. Followers might do that, but you are different. There's a reason why you're here. There's a reason why you guys are called modern leaders. I call you guys modern leaders, even if you don't think you are. 100% you are, because you're willing to do the uncomfortable things. You're willing to put yourself out there. You're willing to feel a little bit fearsome, but do it anyway. And that's really what the world needs, right? But can you imagine what the world would be like if leaders didn't put their values as stakes in the ground and they just kind of like just went all over the place, right? They would feel what's called inauthentic. I actually have this bracelet that I have right in front of me. It says, be the real and authentic me. So whenever I have a call, I make sure I look down at that. And I don't want to be the inauthentic me. Have you ever felt that way? Where you're like, you kind of feel like you're trying to be somebody else? It's terrible. It feels terrible. And I promise you, your energy isn't going to be there, right? And that's the reason why we want to really identify these values. Because when you find these values, you can use them for your fuel instead of like I don't know, what do they call that when you extinguish a flame? Yeah. So stop extinguishing your flame and start like really like lighting it and igniting it. All right. And that's what we can do when we find our leadership core values. Now, your leadership core values are not found on the outside. They are found on the inside. I actually want to go to something real quick. I'm going to go to my affirmations here. I have affirmations that I read every single day. All right. And this is something that I read. I say, I am in control of my message. I will not allow outside circumstances, people, politics, my police career, or the environment control the message that I'm putting out in the world. I am the decision maker when it comes to my message. People come to me because of my powerful message. If I give that power up, I cannot make the level of impact that I am here to make. I'm ready to feel the fear and the judgment and do it anyway. Guys, I say that all the time because it's very easy to get off of your core values. It's very easy to go, oh, but maybe I should spend more time over here. Maybe I should do this. And if you do that, you don't step into your power. You don't step into like, no, this is what I stand for. Then you stand for nothing. And nobody wants to follow a leader who stands for nothing. I want you to think about this. When you see me popping up, when you see like other leaders popping up, I want you to think about like, what is it about that person that attracts you to them? What is it about them and their message that is meaningful to you? that is most likely their core values. If I stand for family, you're going to be like, okay, this is Mark. His value is family. So no matter what happens, he's always going to make sure that we don't sacrifice our family if I follow him. Maybe there's people who are going to be talking about maybe it's just mindset. Maybe it's growth that is their values, right? Maybe it's health. Whatever that is, you already know what that person stands for, because when you see them pop across your newsfeed, you already experience a feeling in your body because of their values. Now, if you own a business, this is critical, guys, that you put your values and your stake out there in the ground too, because people are going to be attracted and repelled from your values. They're supposed to be. Somebody comes to my channel and they're like, oh man, I just want to succeed and I just want to hustle my face off and not know my family and not focus on my health and not do this. Like generally they're either repelled when they hear my message, or they're like, no, I need to lean into this. This is the message that I need to hear because I need to reframe this, right? Both of those people are critically important. If you're trying to please everybody, you please no one. And how we do that is we put our stake in the ground of these are my values. So as we go through this little mini presentation that I'm going to take you through, I want you to know that your values can be out of alignment with mine. They're allowed to be. They're your values, which means they're going to be different than mine. I don't want you to just say, oh, Mark has these values, let me take them on. Absolutely not. Even though probably some of them might be similar, because we attract like-minded people. Right? So if you're on social media, if you're somebody who's putting things out there, if you're in charge of people at work, I want you to know that your people need to know your values. You need to wear them everywhere. You need to put your stake in the ground, because people will get behind you to actually, not only fulfill what it is that you're trying to do, but they will be like, yes, I stand for that too. And that's how you create movements, guys. You create movements by putting a stake in the ground and saying, these are my values. Come with me if you want to. If not, it doesn't make you a bad human, but these are my values, all right? And that's what we want to do today. I want to get you to the end of the day to feel like I feel fulfilled. I feel like I'm living on purpose. Did you realize that we were going to be talking about this when we went down goal setting? Probably not, because nobody talks about this, but that's why we're going to be talking about here today. Now, when I first used to think about doing core values exercises, this was back in the day when I first became a police officer, about 20 years ago, they'd put us through this exercise. And it would have 100 words on the page. And then you would go through and you would circle the ones that felt most meaningful to you. And then you'd cross out the other ones. And then you'd go back and you do that one more time. And then you get it all the way down and you have 3 or 4 words. And what I notice is when you use things like that, I'm projecting what I want my core values to be. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. You don't project what you want your core values to be. They're inside of here and you've got to pull them out. Now, I generally take people through a 4-part list of questions to really pull out and identify their core values. Today, we have time for one, all right? So we're going to go through the one that I think is the most impactful, because I really want you to help identify your core values based on your past when you felt like you were most on point, okay? Now, as we go, I know I kind of said this, and I'm kind of I'm putting stuff out like a fire hose right now, because I'm just saying what's kind of near and dear to my heart that you need to hear right now. But I do want to hear back from you in the comment section. I know that we have a whole lot of people who are here, not only just from the various programs that Josh and I do, but also people from YouTube, people from my police career, people from all over. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you guys for doing this, all right? But as we go, I want to hear your values, all right? Some of you guys have done the core values exercises with me before. I really want you to do this again, because I really want you to dive deeper into your core values. Now, as we go, as I ask you these questions, or at this one question, I want you to know your core values don't ever change, but you get better at clarifying them. You get better at communicating them, all right? In the beginning, mine was health, family, impact, and integrity. And that was it. Health, family, impact, integrity. I didn't have anything else deeper than that. And as I developed more and more and more, I'll read you what mine are now today. They became statements. And as I was growing and becoming more, doing this exercise over and over and over again, they actually make me feel like when I read them in the morning time, which is when I always suggest people do that, not necessarily in the morning time, but before you're going to be put in, right? Before you're going to be taken off the bench and be put into the game of real life, right? For me, it's before I do these calls, I read my core values to remind myself of what I'm fighting for, all right? It fuels me up. It fires me up. You guys probably see that. My energy is really, really high when I get on these calls. If you see me during the normal day, it's not as high, because I make sure that I really fully utilize these core value statements, okay? All right, you guys ready for this question? All right, I know some of you guys have experienced this in the past, but like I said, we got to do this again. All right, question number one. I want you to think of a time when you had a really meaningful experience with another human being that felt great to you. So think about a time in the past when you had a really incredible experience and it felt very meaningful to you, all right? I want you to describe what was going on in that experience. What was happening? Why did it feel so amazing? I'm going to give you a few different other questions to really dive deep there. But what we're doing here, guys, is I want you to think about something that has impacted you a lot, some kind of connection that you've made, whether it's with your family, it's another human being, whatever that is. And I want you to brainstorm, write out as much as you can when I ask you these follow-up questions, all right? Go back into the past and find one of those amazing, incredible experiences, all right? So what was it that you were doing to contribute to that experience? Who was that experience with? Was there certain people that it was with? Who was not a part of that experience? I always like to ask the opposite of that too, right? Because sometimes you come to realize, like, maybe there's some things that weren't a part of that maybe you're putting a lot of energy and effort into right now, right? Where were you? Was there a specific location that you were at? Was there a place? Was it a time? Really pull that out, all right? Why was that such a memorable experience? So why do you feel that that was such a memorable experience? What did the other person that you were experiencing that with, what did they say or do that basically told you that that was also impactful for them too? So what did the other person say or do that showed you that it was just as impactful for them? And then since you've experienced this, what kind of impact has this had on you? Since you've experienced that, what kind of impact has that had on you? Now, I want you to brainstorm and write this out. And I'm going to share with you where this initially started for me. But as we go, I want you to write it out, all right? Write it out. This is going to be something you develop, all right? Obviously, it's important to you, or you wouldn't have remembered it, right? But if you haven't thought of anything now, I want to give you an idea of something that happened to me, and it might bring back an experience like this for you, okay? Now, for me, when I did this experience, I don't know why. It was kind of like my laser focused, like I just shot to a specific incident that where Teresa, me, Andrew, and Alyssa, my kids, we were at Disneyland. I actually remember this like it happened yesterday, and it happened a long time ago. I remember I went there, and this was the only time that we actually rented one of those lockers at Disneyland. I actually rented a locker, and I put my phone in the locker. Then we just went around the park, and I remember this very specific time that we were in line for Space Mountain, all right? It was the first time the kids ever went on it. They were super nervous. They were like all excited at the same time. They were like, what is this going to be like? How's this going to, like, I don't know. I'm just so nervous, Dad. Like what? And I remember us just standing in line, getting ready to walk towards and get on the actual roller coaster. And I remember that experience. Number one is did not have my phone on me. I was completely disconnected. Number two is I was in a different place. I wasn't at home. I wasn't doing the normal, same old, same old. I was like experiencing something else together. Number three is like we were doing something new. It was not something old. It was an experience that, number one, I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to remember it too. And I remember seeing their excitement in their face. I don't know about you guys, but 95% of like my enjoyment of Christmas is just seeing what the kids think and feel like when they experience the presents. Like presents, that's okay. They're okay for me. But like giving them to my kids, that is like the greatest experience. I get to relive my childhood experience through them. I also do that through my daughter. Like whenever she's playing soccer, I'm like, I go there because I love to see her doing that and experiencing that. And for me, that's like one of my values is I love to do things like that. But when I thought about the impact that this day at Disneyland made for me, and then after the ride, they got on it. They were so excited. They got off. They were like, oh my God, I did it. Like I was able to do it. They were so proud of themselves. And I was proud of them too. And I just thought about like, this is going to be one of those times I never forget. And what's crazy is that happened, I don't even know, like 8 or 9 years ago. But when the person was talking to me about, think about a meaningful experience, that's what came up. And so what happened is I wrote everything down. I wrote down what was happening, where I was, who was there, who wasn't there, what wasn't there. Where's this? This thing? It's called my phone. It wasn't there. I'm gonna put it over here to the side because it shouldn't be here, right? All of these different things. I'm like, oh, well, what was there? What created that experience for me? What made me feel incredible? What did the kids do that proved to me that they enjoyed it too? And I pulled out all of that stuff. And as you're writing it all down, Once you're finished and you've done all these brainstorming, you look down and you start circling the key words. The key words. So I went down and I started to circle things. I talked about like being disconnected. All right. I was talking about great experiences. I was talking about family. Okay. I was talking about like doing something new. I was talking about, I circled, I wasn't at home. And what it did is it literally painted a clear picture for me to identify that one that was the most important value to me there was family. I'm like, no, this is why family is so critical to me. And that's literally why I talk about family all the time on leadership. I talk about family when I'm giving presentations to thousands of police officers. I talk about family when I'm giving LAPD homicide detectives like a training on time management. I literally talk about it everywhere on my podcast, on my YouTube, everything. You know why? Because it's my core value. And some people are like, dude, just tell me about the leadership stuff. And I'm like, duh, leadership is so important when it comes to your family. Like that's really an important part of that piece, right? And what makes me different, guys, is I don't just talk about leadership that way. I talk about leadership when it comes to your family. And people are like, what do you mean leading your family? That's why I do that, because I lean into my core values. Your core values make you different. They make you different. And so when you can lean into that, it will truly give you not only the feeling of fulfillment at the end of the day, but it'll be able to get you to hit your goals, which we'll talk about next. All right. So I want you to go back to that specific situation. I want you to circle the words that really stand out to you. And this will get you to start identifying what your core values are. Now, once you get this process done where you go through and you circle some of those words, I want you to think about like not only writing these words down so you can kind of see them, but I want you to write them into a form of a sentence. Now, I'm going to give you mine when it comes to family, what I came up with, because I really want you to see how this works in practice, all right? So my values are family, health, impact, and integrity, all right? Everything that I do has to flow through there. If I don't feel like I'm living in integrity, I don't do it. If I don't feel like I'm making an impact, I don't do it. If it's sacrificing my health, I don't do it. If it's sacrificing my family, I don't do it, all right? So I make sure that it flows through every single one of these. But for family, I want to write down what I created based off of my trip to Disneyland. I create epic family memories and connection by spending intentional time with my family daily while being unplugged to avoid distraction. Let me say that again. I create epic family memories and connection by spending intentional time with my family daily while being unplugged to avoid distraction. That is me to a T. You know when I don't feel good is when I'm not living to that value. And there's going to be times where you're not going to be living to your values. Don't you want to be able to have a statement that you can read and then wait at the end of the day to go, nope, I was not living my values. That's how I get back into it. Now, guys, when you do this, when you identify your values, it now unlocks the door to start setting goals. If you don't know that all of your goals have to flow through your core values, you're going to be stuck. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to stop before you need to stop. You're going to get the shiny object syndrome. All of those things we talked about in the beginning, they're going to actually happen to you because you're not flowing it through your core values. That's literally why I spent 28 minutes talking about it, all right? Yes, I want to get into setting goals in a little bit, but it's never at the cost of your values. If you try to succeed and do so at the cost of your values, you will not be able to succeed. Your mind, your body, everything will do whatever it can to get you off track. So being able to identify these, being able to go back, thinking about an experience that you had that was really memorable for you, and then circle them and then write out some type of core value statement and make sure that everything you do flows through that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about one more piece before we dive into the goal setting session, all right? And that is like your core values are going to be constantly pulling at you at the same time. Meaning, if you have an impact and a family, all right, maybe you're going to be making an impact on social media right now, like YouTube, like me. Does that mean that I'm pulling myself out of my family? No, it doesn't. Because number one is I'm always talking about them and I'm always leaning into that value. But number two, they know when I'm done here, it's them time. Just like how right now is YouTube time, that means when my door's closed, dad is on a call, he's helping impact people, and I actually bring my kids involved and I let them know. I let them see messages of people who are like, Mark, man, this really changed my life. This has really been exponential for me. It's helped me do this and this and this. I get them to see that so they can see the kind of impact that I'm making. But they also know that when it's work time, it's work time. When it's impact time, it's impact time. But also when it's family time, it's family time. When you will feel yourself getting off is if you have these 4 values and you're only living into one. Then you're going to get to the end of the day and you're going to feel like, oh man, like I let all of the other ones go. And yes, we have different seasons. We call this, Teresa calls this harmony, right? I hate balance. It's like harmony between them all, but you know that you're going to want to do all of them all the time, 100% of the time. But you're going to have to make sure that you live as true to those values as possible and make adjustments along the way. It's never going to be perfect, all right? All right, now let's get into goal setting, all right? Goal setting. I want you to flow everything that we just talked about through this goal setting intensive. Now, I'm not going to go fully deep into everything we teach inside of the Push Coach Certification School or anything that I teach inside of the programs. I really want you to kind of see this from a different perspective, all right? I want you to see things through, not only through your leadership lens, but also through your core values, all right? Now, we're going to start by sharing some philosophies around goal setting. This, once I had it married up to my core values and I understand how to properly set goals, then it helped me to really pull out the goals that I really wanted to be able to achieve, all right? These are all things that Josh really taught me like literally 7 years ago. And I've been able to be using them to level myself up, not only when it comes to my business, but also my career and my health, and when it comes to being the father and the husband that I want to be, all right? So these goal setting philosophies are critically important in any area that you want to set a goal, all right? So number one is goals were not meant to be reached. They were meant to stretch you. Write this out. Type it. I want to see it in the chat. Goals were not meant to be reached. They were meant to stretch you. They were not meant for you to reach them. What a weird philosophy. Why would that even be the case? Guys, if you have a goal that you're going to reach naturally, it's not going to push you to get after it. I want to ask you this. If you had a goal to, make $100,000 versus a goal of making $500,000, what would be the difference there? Well, if you were currently making $50,000 and you're halfway through the year, to get to $100,000, you would just do the same things you're already currently doing. And that is not going to get you any more. That's not going to make you any more of an impact. That's not going to be you thinking creatively. But if you had a goal of 500,000, what do you have to do? You have to think differently. You have to become a modern leader. You have to think about, how do I make a bigger impact in less time? How do I make like more money without it have to being just solely relying on me? How can I make the biggest impact in the world without taking away from my family? And when you start giving yourself the ability of setting huge freaking goals, you're not going to hit it. If you hit your goals, guys, they weren't big enough. They weren't. They honestly weren't. How many of you guys have had a goal, whether it's a quota, whether it's whatever that number is, right? And then you have an entire month to do it. And then what you do is you wait until like the third or fourth week, and then you start doing it and you start working at it. But what if you set a huge goal that actually didn't allow you to do that? It didn't allow you to give you the freedom of that. What for me personally, so if I have a goal of having $1 million business, I can't wait until December to start working. But if I have a goal to make a $300,000 business, I'm like, I'll just wait a little bit, because if I just keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to be fine, right? And when we realize that actually the purpose of a goal is not to hit it. The purpose of the goal is to make it big enough to get us to think differently. And when we think differently, we do different things. We don't have any more time or any less time. Guys, do you guys have any more time than Elon Musk? Do you have any more time than Buffett? Do you have any more time than like all of these like really superstars? You don't have any more time. They leverage their time. They're able to think differently. You know why? Because they think, how do I create more without having to do more? How can I have such a huge goal that it forces me to not just do it all myself? Guys, if you have small goals, you know what it's going to do? It's going to force you to work harder. If you have huge goals, it's like, I can't do this by myself. I need to find some other humans out there, right? And it gets you in this creative space that you just would have never been at, all right? So don't set small goals. Small goals are not for you. They're not for modern leaders. They're for everybody else out in the world. And it's just like, oh, just keep doing what you're currently doing. That's cool. That's not us. We're looking for more, all right? And we do that by setting huge goals that sometimes make us feel a little bit sick to our stomach. But I promise you, what you're going to notice is up here, this starts to work. And it's like, oh man, how am I going to do that? Who's somebody out there that maybe has some information? Who is it that can teach me? What skills do I need to develop? I got to do this now. It's called creating urgency, all right? Stretch goals create urgency. It's not like, oh, I'll just wait and I'll push this off until next quarter. It's no, like you got to get started right now. What if you created a goal for 2023 that required you to start right now? Not after the holidays. I almost said Halloween. Not after the holidays, not after January. Like, guys, that's the rest of the world. The rest of the world's waiting for everything to be cool, calm, for everything to just like work out, for the Christmas trees to be put down, for everything. And then they're going to get started. Yeah, right. Because that's what they did. They've been doing over and over and over again, right? Instead, we think about what is our goals for this year so much so that I'm like, I'm going to get started now. I don't mean you're going to be glued to your TV over the holidays. No, I want what's in here to get working. Out here doesn't matter as much as what's in here, because what happens in here is you're like, who can I learn from? What's the next course that I can take? Who's the next person that can be my mentor? What's the next book that I can read? What's another social media platform that I can get on? Maybe I can make an adjustment. Instead of being on Instagram and Facebook like Mark was doing for 9 years, maybe I can be on YouTube and I'm making just as much impact in 2 months that I was making in Instagram and Facebook for 9 years. That is the possibility when you start thinking of it differently, all right? It creates urgency. Now, the reason why urgency is so important is because it literally demands focus. Actually, urgency creates focus. We'll start with that. Urgency will create focus. What I mean by focus is you can't wait for things to happen on their own. You can't just say, oh, hey, let me just wing it and just see what happens. You're super focused. It gets you to go, okay, I need to focus on like literally connecting the dots. You know that? Like I was reading a book about this. And it's like sometimes you plant a seed in here, a question, and you go to bed and you wake up the next morning and you have the answer. Now, it can't do like complicated math equations, but what it can do is it can go, you know what? Let's just put this little seed in here of like, hey, it's possible. It's possible to achieve this thing. We don't know how, but let's just put it in there. And then the next morning, I've woken up and go, I know exactly how I'm going to do that. I know exactly what my video title is going to be. I know exactly who my target audience is going to be. I know exactly what this next thing is going to be. I know exactly what I'm going to say in this interview to get this next position. And it's because I planted that seed. It creates an incredible amount of focus. If you have small goals, you're not going to be urgent about it, and you're not going to be able to create focus around it. All right. So set big goals to create that urgency and really even create your focus so that you can literally get the things downloaded into here that you need to get downloaded. All right. And focus breeds creativity. All right. Focus breeds creativity. When I talk about focus, we're like, okay, this is what we need to do. These are the actions that we need to take. All right. But there's also something in here that goes, but yeah, you're going to have to think outside the box there. Like maybe there's a different way that you can go about this. Right. Because if you're just like, oh, if I'm at 50,000 right now and I just keep doing it, I'll get to 100,000. You're going to keep doing the same actions, right? You're going to keep doing the same things. But if you're like, okay, I got to get to 500,000 and right now I'm at 50,000, you're going to go, what can I do differently? What is something that I can do differently? Guys, the Push Coach Certification School for me and for Josh, I know for me specifically, was that different. Guys, I was coaching. And I love to do that. But if I had just been thinking about incremental goals, I would still be coaching. Instead, my mind went to, how can I make a bigger impact in less time? What if I taught people how to coach? Like so many people are like, oh my God, Mark, this has been life-changing. Can you show me how to do this? And I didn't have a structure to do that. And in Josh, the same thing. He's like, no, this is so impactful. Like what I do, the programs that I put together, the groups that I put together. What if I could teach somebody else how to do this? And it just so happened that we both connected at the same time, reconnected. And he's like, what do you think about doing this? Guys, if I didn't have big goals, I would have said no. I would have said, no, I'm not qualified for that. I've never created a school before in my life. And then half of you guys who've gone through the Push Coach Certification School, you wouldn't even be here. Now, a year and a half later, we have almost 100 coaches that are out there who understand the philosophies of life coaching like I did. And they're out there impacting the world. But it also has helped me hit my goal so much faster. It's the marriage of what I'm here to do, like what I'm here to do in terms of serving. And at the same time, being able to get me to hit my goals at the same time is where that marriage is. All right. So create goals that scare you. When you do, it's going to create this amazing demand inside of you. It's going to actually get you to create more focus. It's going to get you to be even more creative. And you have to demand ownership of yourself. All right. When you have a big goal, and you want to get after it, you can't wait for other people to do it. If I'm saying you got to go from $50,000 a year business to, $1 million, or you're going to go from the rank of police officer to a police lieutenant, you've got to get after it. You can't wait for somebody to do that for you. You can't wait for somebody else to get into a leadership role and make you that position, right? You can't do that. You got to be like, what do I need to do about this, right? What can I control? Because if you're waiting for everything else on the outside, you're not going to be able to create that. I mean, and even like when you do, it's not even going to feel like you even worked for it. This is here for a reason. It's here so you can take ownership and you can control the pieces that you can control. You know what's crazy is like when you control the things you can control, that you can even control the things that you can't. It's crazy like that. When you go after it, and you're putting in the energy and effort, you create things that would have never been possible before. And you do that because you're like, I am on point. This is what I'm here to do. And I'm taking ownership of this piece. All right. So that is why we set big goals. All of these things happen, guys. All of that breakdown, creativity, demanding ownership, focus, all those things, urgency. It happens when you create huge goals. Now, with that in mind, I want to find out what your goal is. What is it that you really want? Now, I'm going to wait a second here because I want everybody who's here watching this on the replay, on the live, I don't care. I want to hear what you want. If you don't put this out into the world, you will not get it. I promise you, if you keep it inside of here, inside of your brain, it will not be powerful enough to pull you towards it. Tell the world right now, what do you want? Now, when I say, what do you want? And I do want you to type this up. I don't mean the first thing that pops into your mind. No, what is that thing going to get you? I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to get into better shape. Why do you want to get into better shape? I want to make $100,000 in my business. Why do you want to make $100,000 in your business? What does that lead to? What is that goal that you're going to be able to achieve when 10,000 people have your program? When you do make $1 million? Like, what is that going to be able to do for you? And when you get down to this deep, deep reason, it doesn't have anything to do about what everybody else says you should want. I hear this really, it's crazy. Like, you hear this thing of like hitting six figures, right? I mean, I literally have a program that I co-created with Josh, or that I help him with, called 6 months to six figures. And so many people don't even sit down to ask themselves, do they actually want six figures? No, some of them want seven figures. Some of them want way more than that. Some of them just want $500 a month. It doesn't matter what you want unless when it comes time to thinking about what you want, that's what matters. It doesn't matter what I want. It doesn't matter if I want you to have a six-figure business or a seven-figure business. You have to identify, what do I actually want? Because if you're chasing something you don't want, you're not going to be able to push long enough to actually get there, right? So I want to identify what you actually want. And I'm going to stop talking here for a second. If you're watching this on the replay, I apologize, but I really want you to think about this, because if all I do is get you excited and motivated, I failed as your mentor. I failed as your coach, and I'm not here to just talk and get you excited. I want you to identify what you really freaking want, and I want to write it in this section now, okay? I'm going to read some of this. Ed, dude, thank you for writing that. He says goals were not meant to be reached. They were meant to stretch you. Exactly. Elizabeth says, I'm sitting here thinking about how I can set up more practice discovery calls before the end of the year. I love that, Liz. Let me ask you, what is your goal around that? What kind of impact are you trying to make? What are you trying to do in those practice calls? All right. Shelly says, my goal is to make $100,000 monthly in order to provide financial security for my family. I love that, guys. And I want to let you know this too. All right. Everybody's goal is going to be based off of them and what they actually want. All right. When I say doing a push goal, some of you guys, it might be super huge. And if that fuels you, please keep it. If it's so big that makes you feel like, oh, that's never going to happen, and now you get back into making yourself smaller, I want you to revisit that too, all right? I want you to really think about your specific goals, and is this what I really want? If this is what I really want, then go after it. But if it doesn't fuel you, then you got to keep asking yourself what you really want. Everybody on this call knows what they want. I want you to think about this. Good question. Elizabeth asked, are we talking about like what we want like in like permanent, or what we want this year? I want you to focus on this year, all right? Because if it's what you want in your life, I love doing that visioning exercise, but it doesn't give you urgency. We have to set a deadline. And in 2023, I want to know what we fast forward to the end of December, all right, next year. What is it that you've been able to achieve? What is it that you're like, this is the goal that would like literally change my life forever? What would that be? Elizabeth says, I'm trying to help others, but also better myself, but that's not your goal. You're right. I want to hear what your goal is. What is your actual goal? The marriage of a goal of it's a personal thing, but it's also mission-based. It is so important. I want you to have personal goals, whether it's goals that make you feel better, goals that make you have a ton of money. I almost said goals that make you just like invincible when it comes to like, it doesn't matter what happens in the market. I'm invincible now, right? Or invincible. But then also that has to be married to something that you're doing out in the world, right? The impact that you're making. So I want to hear, what is your goal over the next 12 months? All right. Now, once we have this goal, and I want you guys to really sit down and analyze this. I know not a lot of people have put it here. You guys are kind of like probably thinking about this, and that's totally okay. And I want you to come back to this video when you do have it, and I want you to share it with me here, because we're going to reverse engineer what it's going to take, all right? We're going to reverse engineer what it's going to take. Now, when I set goals, I set two goals. I set a personal goal, and I set a professional goal. A personal goal and a professional goal. So as you're working through this, think of what is a personal goal that I want to achieve in this next year, and what is a professional goal that I want to achieve this year. The reason why I do this is because sometimes when I just choose one, it makes me feel like I'm off track already. It makes me feel like I'm not living into my values. If I say all I want is a personal goal, that's great, but there's a lot of people out there who are like going through pain in the world. And if I'm only willing to have a personal goal, I can't do that. I'm impact related, remember? But also, if I have a professional goal and it's going to make a huge impact, there's some key people at home that I want to make a bigger impact for than I want to make for the other people. I love you guys so much, but I don't love you as much as my kids. I don't love you as much as Teresa, and I won't do as much for you as I will for them. And so when I think about like the bridge of both of those, how can I have a personal and a professional goal? It lights me up, because then I start asking myself, how can I excel at both? Remember I told you that I was doing my business over and over and over and over again. I was only setting really professional goals. And then the first time I heard this training, I was like, what if I set a personal and a professional goal? And my goal was to 6x my business. And I also wanted to spend more quality time with my family. And what I did is I started a program in here. How could I spend more time with my family, but 6x my business? And guess what happened? I 5x my business and spent 4 specific vacations unplugged with my family. And I'd never done that before in an entire year. And you might ask yourself, well, like, how did you do that? I'm not here to tell you how. I'm here to implant in here how to find your how, because your goals are not my goals. I'm just giving you them as an example. But when you can marry those two, it makes you unstoppable. All right. Now, once you have these things, I want you to like really examine them in terms of like, a goal is not typically an action, right? If you say, my goal is to exercise every single day, that is not a goal. That is an action. You can literally go out and do that today. Like, that's not going to pull you through the year, right? What is the effect of exercising every day? What is the effect of sending 10 invites a day? So many people are like, my goal is I want to get 20 people into my program. Okay, what is that really going to give you? Okay, it's going to give you this amount of income, right? It's going to make this level of impact. It's going to do this. And when you can put things like that into place, it's not just, hey, I want to send 10 messages today. It's like, what's the effect of doing that? What do you want to create in the world? What do you want to create in terms of your goal at the end of this year? And it's generally not an action. It's generally like, this is what I want to be able to create. For me, it was, I want to retire from my job. Initially, it was like, hey, I want to make this much money in my business. I want to do this. That's like surface level, guys. When you think about this and you're like, okay, what is that specific thing? What is that actually going to be able to create for me? For me, my goal was like, I'm going to retire from my police career. It's way too stressful, especially with an autoimmune disease. It's taken so much of my energy and so much of my life away. It's the greatest thing that I've done career-wise, and I would not give it back for anything, but also it's time to move on. And it's time to take those experiences and pass them on to the world outside of police work, right? Which I honestly think that people outside of police work value it even more than inside, because a lot of times inside, they're always talking about tactics. And I'm like, no, you're missing the key component. And the key component is making sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you can take care of everybody else, right? And so when I think about like me being able to retire, all of those things happen where I get to make a bigger impact. But my goal was like, I'm retiring by the end of the year. And it's crazy because I'm retiring in February, right? But that was my goal for this year. And then I can put some numbers to it, all right? When you have that clear vision of like, this is what I'm going to be able to do at the end of the year, then you can go, okay, what is that going to take? What is that going to take? You know what's crazy, guys? And Teresa and I are going to be doing this next weekend, is when you sit down and you go, this is the goal. I want to feel more connected with my family than ever before. I want to feel them to feel like so excited that I'm at home, or when I'm coming home, that they're like, I can't wait for dad to come home. Now you got to say, okay, what numbers can I associate with this to make sure that it happens? Then you can reverse engineer the numbers. How much money do you need to make? And what's funny is like when you sit down and you start writing this out, okay, I need to make this amount of money. Okay, this is how I'm going to do this. I can do it from this many people in my program. I can do it from this many speeches. I can do it from this many webinars. I can do it from this. And then you write it all out, guys, it starts to become real. And then you're like, look at this. Look at what I can do, right? I can do this from my DJ career. I could do this from editing videos and photos. I could do this from creating my own, Kane legacy. Like I'm not just talking about Kurt here, but like literally just writing it out. Like this is how much I'm making from here. This is how much I'm making from. It gets real, guys. It gets really real when you start putting numbers behind it. Now, I always want to remind you that remember your numbers, and it's important that you have these goals, but it has to always flow through your limiting beliefs. Never will you sacrifice your limiting beliefs to be able to get to these goals because you will convince yourself not to do it all the time. And that's what our brain is doing. It will constantly look for any story that it can to grab onto to make it so that you won't finish out strong. But you are not most people. Remember, I said that like 47 million times, and that's why you're willing to do this. Now, I want you to think about this goal that you have. So let's say you have a goal to, like I did, like to retire. You have a goal to get more connected with your family. You have a goal to become the chief of police. You have the goal for whatever. I want you to think about this, all right? Now, you are a year from today, all right? It's December 24th, 2023, and you have accomplished it. You did it. You did it. You put in the work. You put in the energy. You connected to the right people. You went to the right courses and programs. You're part of the right masterminds. You're reading the right books. You were listening to the right podcasts, and you freaking did it. You did it. And now somebody is coming to you. And they're like, you know what? Elizabeth, Kurt, Teresa, Shelly, Julie. What's up, Julie? How did you do that? Like, I want you to teach me. Like, what were the things that you did in order to make that happen? And they ask you this question. Julie, what were the 2 to 3 things that you did with excellence that allowed you to hit that goal? Like, what are the 2 to 3 skills that you developed in order to make it just so like it was just a matter of time? What were some things that you did differently that changed the game for you? The reason why I ask these questions, guys, is because you don't need me to tell you the answers, even though probably a lot of people do. No, I want you to find your answers by fast forwarding to the end of the year and going, I did it. And you're coming from this place of knowing. There's a difference between like understanding and knowing. Difference between knowledge and knowing. Like, I achieved it. Think about something you've achieved right now. And if somebody were to come to you, you'd be like, oh yeah, these are the 5 steps. I want you to now think about that for your goal for this year. What were the things you did with excellence? What skills did you develop? What were some of the actions that you took that allowed you to be able to create that goal? And I want to ask you one more last question, all right? What were some of the things that tried to get you off course this year? And what did you do to make sure that they wouldn't? So here's the thing, guys. As we go on through this entire rest of the year, I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to be doing videos for you. I'm going to be doing workshops with you. I'm going to be doing whatever I can on my end, probably putting together a program for people who want to take a little bit deeper of a dive, right? But I really need you to identify, like, what are some of those things that you learned? What were some of those skills you used? Who was it that you learned from? Who was it that you like plugged into to actually make that happen? And when you can think about the things that popped up along the way that tried to get you off track, and you can think about them now, you can literally plan them out. How many of you guys are like, okay, yeah, my kids got sick. I got sick. This happened, that happened. I want you to write it all now. Some people think that this is like a way of like getting you off track. It's not. When you think about the things that could get you off track or try to get you off track this next year, you're probably going to know 3 or 4 things that are probably going to come up. Yeah, there's going to be other things that you have no idea about. But as you go, I want you to write it down. Like, this tried to get me off track. The comparison game tried to get me off track because I was looking at all the other coaches. I was looking at all the other police officers. I was looking at all the other parents and seeing how great they were. And I knew that I wasn't good enough. What did you do to prevent yourself from going down the comparison trap? Did you unfollow people? Did you remove some certain friends from your life? Did you stop hanging out with people so much? Did you make sure you hang out with the right people? What is it you did? Because you got to come up with a plan. And we're coming up with a plan right now. So what are some of those things that tried to get you off track, that you refused to get yourself off track with? And what are some of the things that you actually implemented to prevent that from happening? All right, guys. Wow, that was like a fire hose. I'm going to open it up for some questions for you guys here right now, but I want to share literally the 5 things that we did today. All right. This is a crazy lot of information, and that's the reason why it's on YouTube, so you can go back and re-listen to it. All right. Number 1 is we identified what your leadership core values are. What makes you tick? What makes you feel like on point at the end of the day? You don't feel like you're being inauthentic, because I don't want you to be somebody else. I want you to be the best version of you, right? Number 2 is we helped identify your goals, what you really want. I talked about setting a personal and a professional goal, not just one, but both of them. Then we talked about what are the 2 to 3 skills that you had to develop. So we fast forwarded to the end. You've already been able to get through this year. You've been able to succeed, and you created that goal you wanted to create. And now we're asking you, what are the 2 to 3 skills that you had to develop in order to get there? Then we talked about like really just divining a plan. I didn't dive deep into this, but it's like, okay, what are the things you had to do monthly, weekly, and daily to make yourself hit that goal? Coming from this place of knowing. And then we also talked about like, what are some of the things that popped up that tried to get you off track? Now, guys, I want to let you know this. We have core values. We have a plan. We have our goal. We have the things that we're going to get after. I want to let you know there's a process that most people forget. It's called evolution. It's called evolution, meaning the way that you think it's going to work out is never the way that it works out, but it was exactly supposed to work out that way. I remember when I was actually sitting down and doing this really early on in my coaching career, maybe like 5 years ago, I was writing out the notes of what I really wanted. And I had no idea. For me, I thought I was going to be like, I'm going to run masterminds for law enforcement officers forever, until I found out that that's a very hard group of people to get you to pay money, because we're really, really cheap. And what I didn't realize is when I was writing that out, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to help this many police officers. I'm going to be able to give $100,000 a month or a year to this organization. It's called the Blue Family Tree by Patrick Rice. And I'm like writing this all out, right? And then at the end, I was like, you know what? And I'm going to teach other people how to coach too. And when I wrote that down, I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like, where did that come from? And it came from a place of like, you know what? 4 to 5 years from now, maybe I'll be able to do that. Guys, do you know, like in a year after that, like I had become a certified life coach, and then Josh had approached me about helping to create a school to help out other people coach. And if I had not been willing to actually ask myself these questions and to brainstorm it and to not have the answers, can I use this? To not have the answers right now? You don't need to have the answers. As long as you program in here a goal that you want to achieve, some of the skills that you know that you need to learn next, right? The things that will pop up will present themselves. The opportunities will present themselves. And if you are not open to accepting them, of course you're not going to find them. But if you're open to accepting them and you're really willing to like get after it all the time, and your goals are really something that you want, not what everybody else says they want, but what you want, and it flows through you being you, and you don't have to be anybody else to get it, that is going to be something that you're going to be able to like not only lean into, but push through those things that try to get you off track. All right. Now, I know for a lot of you guys, some of those things have to do with self-sabotage. And that's why next week, we are going to be diving really deep into self-sabotage, all right? For right now, I want to see, is there any other questions? Whether it's questions about goal setting, whether it's questions about anything here that we kind of have gone over, put them in the comment section. And I want to let you know that from last weekend, I'm not sure if you were here, I taught how to become unstoppable. One of the things is once you have those goals and once you're starting to get after it, you have to generate the momentum that it's going to take for you to be able to achieve that thing. If you want to have $1 million business, that doesn't mean you make $250,000 a quarter. No, it means you maybe make $20,000 the first quarter, and then $80,000 the second quarter, and then you make $90,000 the third quarter, and then you make the whole rest of it in the fourth quarter. That's what creating momentum is all about. And if you haven't seen that workshop, I'll link to it here at the end. Go back, watch that workshop, learn how you can become unstoppable, and marry these two up together, your core values, your goals, and creating that momentum, and you will truly be unstoppable. All right? All right. Let me see that. Julie, I want to hear one of your goals. It says, my goal is to be an influencer as my authentic self and help others get through challenging moments in my professional and personal life. Still working on my mindset first. Julie, you are working on it. We all are. Guys, I'm still working on it too. I'm working on my mindset. I'm working on getting better here. I'm working on my next level. There's not something you get to where you're like, oh, okay, I'm good now. No, it's this constant thing. But here's the thing. All you have to do is help enough people get to where you are. Julie, you've been through some hard stuff. you are a freaking powerful leader. And there's people out there who are like, they need a Julie in their life. They need somebody who's willing to feel uncomfortable and to do it anyway, and to lead them and to step up, because leaders know the way, they go the way, and they what? They show the way. And Julie, you do that. You get after it all the time. Of course, when we can get beyond what's ever sabotaging us up in here, but the world needs you and your message, all right? I love that that is your goal, and I want you to get after it, all right? And I want to actually hear about this, all right? Liz says, I wrote a lot down. I had to flesh that out. Yes, Liz, so important. Elizabeth, it's so important to flush this stuff out. Guys, it never comes out right the first time. Sometimes it's going to feel awkward. When I say sometimes, I mean like all the time. If it's not feeling awkward, then you would have already had it already. If you had already done this before, you'd already been able to have it already, right? But no, you have to think about something in an entirely different level. That's why I say we're modern leaders. We look at things differently, right? And that's what I'm literally here to do, is to help teach you how to start seeing things differently. Because when you see the world differently, they will start seeing you differently, right? And when you start responding to the world differently, they will start responding to you differently. And that's how we create massive, massive influence. All right, guys. I appreciate you so freaking much. Ed, I know you said your head is the biggest obstacle. Join us next week, because I'm going to blast through that head voice, all right? And we're going to have an entire presentation just based off of that. But you guys have an incredible, incredible holiday. I appreciate you more than you know. Let me know what your biggest aha moment or takeaways were below. Even if you have to come back to this later, I don't care. I want to hear it, because I want you to put it out into the world. When you put it out into the world, you will be accountable to going out there and getting after it, all right? I appreciate you so much, and the change that you're making out there in the world needs you now more than ever. Thank you guys for being willing to feel fear and do it anyway. You guys are incredible modern leaders, and I'll see you guys next week.